Had an exposure to COVID yesterday and today. The lady just found out she's got COVID, so Amanda asked me not to come. I just tested negative, but it could come on later.
I'd like to call this meeting of the Transportation Committee meeting to start. It's July the 19th, 2022, approximately 5:18. So let's have a moment of silence, please. Mr. Root?
Yes, sir. Please pray with me if you like to. Father, again, and we can never be grateful enough because you've given us so many good gifts, but we are appreciative of this day you've made and for making us and sustaining our lives. Help us to have grateful hearts. And I pray now that you really give us a sense of mindfulness, that we are thoughtful about the words we speak, that they would be the right words, and that we would have ears to hear and soft hearts. Please govern this meeting by your will and in your wisdom, and in your name I pray. Amen.
I stand for the pledge of allegiance, and I'll start it. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. I need a motion to approve the minutes for last meeting.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor, please say aye.
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 The vote is 3-0.
We're going to have a discussion on abandonment of Thornburg Road, TU 67, and Dinky Line Road, TU 34. And Mr. Kyle Reed with the road department is going to tell us what he's found out about the survey for closing these roads.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Mr. Hart. So, the Code of Ordinances calls out for us to go through a specific process to come back to Transportation Committee for y'all to make a decision of whether or not y'all would want to send it on to council as far as the abandonment of Thornburg and Dinky Line. So the first thing that we are required to do is putting a sign up along the roadways that basically says that the road has been brought up for abandonment, gives our number, gives the pertinent ordinance that it would fall under, all those good things. So we did that in March of 2022. So gotten several months, about 4 months of comments back on this road. The road, as you can see, is the Dinky Line, which runs between Jenkins Bridge and Pickens Road, and then Thornburg that cuts off to the north side there and runs back from Dinky Line to Jenkins Bridge Road. So staff report of findings is in front of y'all. That goes through the whole process, what we did, that the road is ours, where the proposed abandonment is, which is at the past the last house on Thornburg. We would request a cul-de-sac being put at that location to terminate Thornburg, and then at the past below the last house on Dinky Line coming from Pickens Road. That's on that large parcel in yellow there. So this kind of goes through that that discussion. It ended up being about a mile road. There's specific questions that need to be answered, whether Dinky Line and Thornburg is or has been a county road, and it is. If it still is a county road, and it is. If the section of Dinky Line and Thornburg to be abandoned is still in use by the general public, or has practically been abandoned, it is still in use by the general public. And then documentation available relating to easements and the status of access easements. And the only right-of-way we have is the 3 parcels right there at the north side that would still be on the county portion of the road. The ordinance that we follow, 26-9, is what those questions have to be answered from. To get to the meat of it, we took public feedback, and what it breaks down to is we had 24 respondents to the request for public feedback, calling or emailing the office. 11 of those would like for the road to be closed and abandoned from county maintenance, and 13 of those would like for the road to stay public and county maintained. Of the 6 of the respondents, 6 actually live or own property on Dinky Line or Thornburg, but just to be clear, I mean, it is a through road, but there's 6 that live or own property on the road that have responded. Of those, 5 would like for it to be closed. The majority of comments for the road to be closed were due to crime, trash being dumped, and speeding, some accidents that had happened and stuff like that as well, and property damage from folks going and accessing properties from the road. The majority of comments for the road to stay open was in relation to emergency vehicle access. There's one of the gentlemen have a special needs son that he was concerned about. The historic nature of the road and using it as a cut through or an alternative route. If council consents to the abandonment of the road, we request the abandonment be contingent on receiving right of way to construct 2 cul-de-sacs at the termination, so we still meet the ordinance as far as that goes. And if this recommendation is supported by county council as to whether the request of abandonment and closure should be honored, the requesting parties, so the folks that sent in the request to abandon the road will be the ones that would be running it through with the courts. So the county would not be involved in that. So it would be up to them to go through all that, all that's responsible and required of them to do to see through for the abandonment, because the only one that can abandon it is the court.
I looked up an old plat done in 1966, and that Thornburg Road used to be called the Coffee Road. And evidently, the Coffee Road from here ran all the way through and ran through there, so that road has been there forever.
Right.
And before I make a decision myself, someone else can make that decision other than me, but if there's a person on there that's got a special needs child and he needs that road, until I talk with him and see if there's something else can be resolved or where he can get that child to a doctor or whatever he needs to do, I say we still need to maintain the signs and just wait before we do any action.
Okay.
Of course, now Mr. Davis may have a different opinion.
Well, so a couple of things. So the 5 or 6 that live there wanted it closed, and that came out.
The own property.
That own property.
That responded. Now, there's a couple more that didn't respond that own property among those.
But they were notified.
Yeah. Yeah.
Based on that.
Mhm.
Driving through that area, obviously I'm aware of that area, but going a couple of different routes from housing from the Thornburg Road homes where it would end to the homes that are actually on the other side of there, the Pickens Road and the Pampas Point. I'm just trying to go through all my stuff. Just trying to think through access on how they did it. I actually saved time going from 7 different residences, so 4 on one side and 3 on the other, down through Toccoa Highway rather than trying to go through Dinky. So the reason why I bring that up is from an access to medical personnel or fire or anything like that, I assume that they would take the quickest route and the easiest route. And that route would be, if you're coming to that Jenkins Bridge Road side, you're coming down Toccoa onto, I believe that was Dixon that comes, or Jenkins Bridge comes up into Dixon.
And they live on the Thornburg side.
And that was quicker for the homes that I chose. Obviously I had to pull out of the driveway, but than it was to kind of come down Dinky and come through that way.
Right.
That side was almost quicker by like 3 minutes.
Right.
Okay, wasn't crazy, but I'm just saying, like,
I think the concern was if something happened on 123, akin to what happened with the culvert that washed out 3-4 years ago. You do have Weldon that comes off of 123 that goes back into the east side of 123 and comes back out at Chaga Road right across from Jenkins Bridge Road. They kind of parallel where they go off. Weldon does go further off. It is a gravel road. There may be some spots that are a little bit narrower than Thornburg on it, but there is another way around. It
so
doesn't.
you brought up what my point was on why they may be concerned because of what occurred in there. So the correction to that specific area and what went in force to correct that road it was substantial to where, I'm not saying it's not gonna happen again, but it was substantial to keep that from happening.
Right, and that was some of the comments, is they've had wrecks on that section of 123 to where Thornburg has become the runaround, as unfortunate as that sounds, but that they would send traffic around that way at times, or people would take that way to go around. Not that they would.
It's the
send-
same way if 85 gets shut down, everybody's coming
Yeah,
down.
Cobb Ridge is one of the big ones,
Yeah,
come
right.
down 76, that kind of stuff. So there is another way around, but again, I'm not trying to interject myself into, their concerns or anything else like that. I don't know if a resident that had the same issue there, if they would be taken to Toccoa, from that section because it is so far out toward Toccoa. Any of those things, and I don't know what kind of services Toccoa offers compared to Oconee Memorial or anything. So, that was just the concern that they brought up to me, is the concern for their son. So I
Right.
passed it on to y'all.
And I agree. I think what Mr. Hart brings up is a very vital thing because that was my question. But I think a lot of the couple of ones that I feel that were against it were because of what occurred out there, or if there's a wreck, this is another way around. But, in those rural areas, it is difficult sometimes that if something is shut down, how do you get around it? And, we deal with that out there where I'm at
Right.
85 is shut down, it's 24. But on the chances that happens, there's a lot of you're out there, there's not a lot of roads in there. So I understand what they're talking about, but I think some of the positives that I feel on there outweigh that. So if we make a motion to move this to council, it still stays posted.
Yes.
It's still, everything still rolls forward. So it's not like we're not unposting it, we're not allowing it to continue on. We're actually going above what is required by state law. And then it would be referred to council. And is that a 3 reading, Ms. Brock, on the abandonment of that road?
I
It's a
believe it is.
resolution.
It is not.
Single.
not.
Yeah, and if I could just interject, generally the way the ordinance is written here, not generally, the way that it's written here is staff does its recommendation and thorough investigation, which Kyle has done, passes it along to y'all. Y'all don't really serve as gatekeepers. It'll go to council, but it'll go with your recommendation. So in light of what Mr. Hart said, he would recommend, as I take it now, that it be the request to abandon not be honored. And that would be the recommendation from the Transportation Committee to council. Council will get that recommendation along with Kyle's report, and then council, by way of the resolution, thumbs up or thumbs down on it. And after that, then it does have to go through the judicial proceedings and the judge, the ultimate criteria. The judge decides if it's in the best interest of all parties concerned. So there's a number of, safeguards in place, but so y'all would pass it to county council in full one way or the other. It would just be with your recommendation for or your request that it not be honored.
Mr. Chairman, it'd be my recommendation that we pass this to council there's not a required public hearing. I'd like to have a public hearing on it before that, or we could have a standalone public hearing if Chairman Elliott agrees to that, on that. But based on the information that I have, I'm in favor of that. But I think if we move it to council, and allow a public hearing, and we can do a standalone if Chairman Elliott agrees to that, and then we can have the first and final, correct, Mr. Root?
Yes, first.
The next meeting after that. So that way it's not a bang, bang. So we can research what you're talking about we can look at those and then that recommendation. But it would be my recommendation that we have a standalone public hearing and then have a first and final resolution on that. And then at that point, we can decide. So do we have to, so we're not necessarily deciding here if we're in favor of it?
You are, as a committee, but you're not working as gatekeepers. So
Okay.
you're passing on and you're saying we received the recommendation and the report from Roads and Bridges, and based on that, and based on whatever else you know, we're in favor of it or we're not. And so then it passes along to county council with that recommendation or that report from you all. And then county council generally just does it by resolution, but in this case, certainly can do a public hearing standalone, perhaps an August meeting, and then follow up in September with the results of that public hearing on top of the other work that you've done. We'll be in front of council at that point for a resolution, but it is just a one reading.
Okay.
Mr. Kane, do you have any comment?
No, it's kind of hard to tell. I'm looking at this on Google Maps. I don't have the package of material that y'all have with you, and I see the markings on the. I also have the YouTube thing open just so I can look at the presentation. Mr. Reed, can you explain again exactly what is being closed there, or is proposed to be closed?
Yes,
Two red lines.
Those are just
those
land
the
hooks.
sections that are to be closed?
those are just land hooks. The yellow line on the far north, that's an approximation. And then the yellow line on the far west on Thornburg,
Okay.
it would probably be a little bit further toward Dinky Line there, but that's an approximation. And then all of Dinky Line as it comes down to Jenkins Bridge.
The trash and the trash has been the issue, based on what I can tell. So the red lines are not, well, one of those red lines on Jenkins Bridge, so that's not an abandonment line, that's just.
It's just a land hook for that parcel,
Okay.
showing that it's both sides.
Gotcha.
Mr. Reed,
Yes, sir.
at your convenience next week, if you'll call me, I'd like to go out there and ride that with you and maybe have a list of the names
Yes, sir.
and maybe stop and talk with some of those people.
Yep, we can set up a time.
That way I'll know better what's going on, and I'd like to see that gentleman that has a handicapped
Sure.
child
Yep.
and see what his major concerns are and how they would, could be accommodated by the county.
Yes, sir.
Do we need a motion?
Yeah, the motion would be to pass along to council and then, which has to happen, but then either with a public hearing, standalone, and with your recommendation that it be approved, or recommendation that it be disapproved.
Based on the findings that I have, I would make that motion and say that it would be approved after, I'm definitely in favor of what Mr. Hart's talking about, but I'm in favor of it based on the findings that we have here of the abandonment of the property. As long as we have the public hearing and the standalone public hearing and the first reading.
There's nothing that anchors you to your decision now. It's your approval at this point in time, so if you go through.
Because we're still in if we go into the discovery period and we come out talking to 2 or 3 people and,
You're against it.
yeah,
To make that.
that's why we have committee and that's why we have council.
Sir.
I have a first and a second. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
The vote is 3-0.
Thank you, Mr. Reed.
The next issue, I'm not sure this is not working. You flip it to the next one. All right, the next issue is discussion regarding sidewalks in the road right of way, and Mr. James Coley's gonna come up and speak to y'all about, planning commission recommendations.
Mr. Coley had a family issue and had to leave. Mr. Root will be standing in for
Sorry.
Mr. Coley.
Okay.
I will. No, I all my papers, I misplaced what James gave me. Here it is. So Planning Commission had written a revision to our Chapter 26, which is our roads and bridges, essentially, ordinance section. The essence of the recommendation is that, the Planning Commission's request is that this revision, and I guess it was not in the backup materials, be reviewed by me. It includes or allows for the inclusion of sidewalks within both county maintained, so public right-of-ways, as well as privately maintained right-of-ways. Within this, the framework that the Planning Commission came up with here, the folks who would be building or owning the sidewalks, the developers in most cases, would still own the sidewalks within the county right-of-ways. That's the way the Planning Commission is written, and they're just requesting that you all direct staff, me, to go over it and then send my recommendations back to the Planning Commission. My recommendations, I think this may be a little bit unworkable. Maybe the best way to do it would be, if you're going to allow sidewalks, is to go ahead and allow them within the county and private right-of-ways, that they not be owned separately by a private entity, but that the private entity has an agreement with the county to maintain and indemnify, hold harmless the county in event of any slip and falls, trip and falls, things of that nature. I think that is proven to be a little bit more of a workable method. But in essence, the only thing that's in front of you here is, are you okay as a general idea allowing sidewalks within right-of-ways, which we don't at this juncture. And then from that point, I would tweak the recommendations from the Planning Commission with my ideas, and then they would deliberate on what I came up with.
I'd make that motion to direct.
I got a question for Mr. Root. I mean,
Hang on, if we,
go ahead.
yeah, I'll make the motion to direct county attorney to draw that up.
Second.
Any discussion? I got one from Mr. Well, I figured somebody else might have a question while I was getting mine together. You kept saying private. What do we have, if a person's got a private, let's say it's a gated community, we don't have any conditions that we have anything to do with the sidewalks in there, do we?
Within the way the code is written right now, we apply essentially the same design criteria for public and private right-of-ways on roads. So, yes, I would say, in the way that this is written, they break it out. They have two sections, one for public, one for private. But in looking at it, they're not too dissimilar the way that they would, the Planning Commission would have council treat each. And Mr. Pearson, if you wanted to speak on it, I mean, you walked this through more than I can. I'm kind of dancing here, but if I got it accurately, then.
I would rather Johnson, because he was actually on the subcommittee.
Okay, sure.
I was on the subcommittee, so I can speak to it if you like. Right now, the sidewalk
Mr.
regulations.
Mr. Chairman, can you state his name?
Please.
Mike Johnson,
Thank you,
Planning
sir.
Commission. Right now, sidewalks are prohibited in Oconee County, even though there's a lot of them around, anywhere within a right-of-way. And that's whether that's a public road right-of-way or a private road right-of-way, no sidewalks. The committee, in hearing from Roads and Bridges, it made perfect sense that on a public road, that a sidewalk in the county's right-of-way would be a problem, in that you have 4 feet of pavement that bumps up a half an inch, and now somebody trips. They're going to want that 4 feet of sidewalk fixed. And that to get an entire concrete truck out there for that is not cost-effective. As a committee, we came back and said, well, what about, okay, we don't do that on public roads. What if we just did it on private roads? And we'll address that here momentarily. But right now, within the right-of-way, within the 50-foot right-of-way, no sidewalks can be there. So as a committee, we said on public roads, in an HOA subdivision, if they wanted to do a sidewalk, that what if the HOA said they were going to be responsible for it? The reason about the sidewalks and the whole issue is that as we talk to developers and trying to get denser projects, say down at the pier, for example, We're trying to get Clemson students across the bridge without driving cars across the bridge. How do you get them on the CAT bus? Well, the developer wants to make a sidewalk so he can go have the people walk to the CAT bus rather than walking in the street. Right now, we prohibit all of that because we don't allow sidewalks on anywhere within that county right away. So that was why this came up.
Any other discussion?
Be interested to get the findings of it and look a little bit more into the information of it.
All in favor, please say aye. Aye.
Mr. Kane?
Aye.
The vote is 3-0.
I guess we'll jump right from this to right-of-way on private roads. Mr. Johnson, I think you were one that's going to be bringing this forward.
If I can figure out how to use this thing,
Hit the right arrow.
will that get us there immediately?
As soon as she gets you up, it will.
Good to go.
Okay, excellent. I'm hopeful that this may help solve that sidewalk issue, at least in part, from a private road standard. But my name is Mike Johnson. I've been appointed by the Planning Commission to give the following presentation that we would like to be reviewed and passed along to County Council. I want to provide information. It's regarding 26-2, B2, and C2, specifically with regard to right-of-ways on private roads, right-of-ways on private drives. The Planning Commission voted 6-0 to move this forward. So I want to show properties that are potentially negatively affected by our current ordinance. I want to show how there are neighborhoods that have had lesser restrictions on their private roads than we currently require, and they've had perfectly easy ingress and egress out of the property for years. And it's specifically with regard to the 50-foot right-of-way on these private roads. An overview of the ordinance, the very first paragraph on the private roads ordinance says Oconee County shall have no responsibility for nor control of the design, engineering, construction, inspection, maintenance, etc., of private driveways, drives, and roads in Oconee County. Yet that's actually not true because we do control the design. To give a quick overview, a private driveway services up to 3 residential dwellings. A private drive serves 4 to 10 residential dwellings. On a private drive, you have 20 feet of pavement, which is the requirement for county public roads as well. So fire safety and whatnot, you're still going the 20 foot of pavement. But you, at 4 to 10 homes, you have to have a 50-foot right-of-way on your private property to do that. Private road steps up to 11 homes or 11 residences, or residential structures, actually. Same 20-foot pavement, 50-foot right-of-way. So public roads, they actually use different definitions than driveways, drives, and roads, but it's the same thing. A county road, 20 foot of pavement, 50 foot of right-of-way. For public roads, it's completely understandable that if you're driving 45 miles an hour down these public roads, that there be a 15-foot additional space off to the side of the road so that you can pull over if you've got a flat tire, or if there's an emergency vehicle that might need to pass. Or if asphalt trucks are out there repaving that section of road, that 15 feet off of the curb should be there in that 50-foot right-of-way for public roads. But these aren't applicable for private roads. I mean, you get a flat tire in a gated community, chances are you're going to walk home and go get the spare, or the neighbor's going to come out with a glass of tea and say, hey, can I help you change your tire? Or if you're even on your private property behind your gate, and you're just trying to get to the house, that 15 additional feet is not necessary. If you're trying to have an asphalt truck over to fill a pothole, chances are you're going to tell them where to park. You've called them out there. It's your private road. So, on all surveys for private roads, on the survey itself, it said the road right-of-way shown on this plat shall be a private drive or private road, not owned, maintained, or supervised by Oconee County, and were not constructed pursuant to any plans for future acceptance by Oconee County. And shall not be accepted. I mean, shall not is all over these documents that the county requires be put there. Yet, the county says, we don't want anything to do with it, but you still have to give us 15 feet on either side of your private road. This just goes on again with the shall not have responsibility for control over design, even though there is control and design by Oconee County. It's been suggested that right-of-way is needed on private roads for utilities. But just think of a gentleman that has 50 acres or 100 acres there. He may be getting his electricity off of the back of the property where there's a line already running across. He may be getting his water from a well. That extra 15 feet off of the curb is not necessarily there for utilities. And it shouldn't be the county's responsibility or oversight for those utilities, when again, those utilities may not even exist, again, on private property. So here's the thing that is very interesting to me, is a residential dwelling in the eyes of Oconee County is not a 911 address. If you have a house and you have a garage apartment, or you have a barn with a bathroom and a kitchen facility in it as a bunkhouse, these are all residential dwellings on your property. So if you have 100 acres out there and you have your house and a garage apartment and a bathroom in the barn with a kitchen, you've already got your three allowed residential dwellings on your 100 acres. You can't section off a portion of that property for a grandchild or child or anybody else, because you're already set unless you have that 50-foot of right-of-way. Now here's numerous examples, many down in Fairplay, but all the way from Fairplay up to the mountains. 23-foot access point to this property. Here's another one, 34-foot access to their property. They cannot subdivide to if they've got more than 3 kids, they can't section that off and give it to them because they don't have enough access for that 50-foot right-of-way to get into that property. 42 feet, 45 feet. Look, let me back up. This person here, 24 foot of access on 20 acres. This guy already has a house and a barn. If he puts a bathroom and a kitchen in that barn, this guy can't subdivide his 20 acres because they both use this 24-foot access. So this guy, the guy B, controls what A gets to do with his property. This one, this access point here, 38 feet to get to this undeveloped property. There's already 3 dwellings on this road. This guy's going to be surprised, and this guy's going to be surprised when he goes to pull a build permit and Oconee County says you can't because you don't have 50 feet. Here's a pinch point, 140 acres with a pinch point of 36 feet. 32 feet, 27 feet for 146 acres. I mean, some of these residences have been there for a long time, and what happens is you've got a lot of road frontage, but you give some to your sister up here so she can have a house, and you give some to your brother over here, and all of a sudden you've always had your old driveway there, which you thought was enough, but according to the county, it's not. You've got to have that 50-foot right-of-way. Here's more, and I could go on and on and on and on with examples, but they told me to be brief. So the county ordinance, one other thing to consider with regard to right-of-ways. The county ordinance 26-3 defines a right-of-way. And it says the right-of-way shall be cleared of all stumps, roots, brush, and other objectionable materials. So you may be a property owner that has 50 or 100 feet of road frontage. And that's great that you do. But when you put your drive going down to your house, you sure better not have a horse fence running along the side of that because you're in the right-of-way. Now, do we police that? No. But it's in the rules here. under the public roads that you gotta have it clear to stumps, brush, trees, etc. Recently, the county, from my understanding, adopted in Waterside Crossing 6 roads that were private roads with less than a 50-foot right-of-way. So the county is willing to accept roads under their maintenance with less than 50 feet, but they require private property owners behind their own private gates to have 50 feet of right-of-way requirement. So throughout the county, there are properties with less than the 50 feet. Let me flip one more here. I have heard several arguments against reducing the private roads. One of them was, well, this restricts development. It doesn't restrict development. You have a developer out of Florida or a developer out of Georgia or any of these big developers, they're concerned about road access and is this a highly populated area? Well, South Carolina is currently the number 3 inbound state in the nation. And they're not moving to Columbia. They're moving to the beach or they're moving here. So those developers out of Florida or Georgia, they're just looking for traffic count. But consider this. You've got a property owner here with 25 acres with a small access point. He's talked to a builder friend who wants to build 12 houses. He comes to the county to get it fixed up. And the builder says, I can't build 12 houses on your property because you don't have but 30 feet. You don't have the 50 feet required. That builder is not going to say, well, I'm not going to build 12 houses. He's simply going to go to the next door neighbor and say, would you sell your land to me? So this developer doesn't care where he gets to. He just wants to get there, if that's his objective. So there are mechanisms and tools for us to control development, and we're talking about that in planning now. But this isn't it. This simply hurts the current owner to do with his property what he wants to do with his property. So what we determined was that it is very reasonable for public roads to have a 50-foot right-of-way. It is very reasonable for public and private roads to have the 20 foot of pavement required for emergency vehicles to get by and pass, etc. For both public and private roads, 20 foot of road surface. It's unreasonable to hold private property owners, hold 15 feet on either side of their property for utilities when that may not even be that is not our responsibility and may not even be where they're getting utilities from. It's also unreasonable for the county to restrict the owner's use of their own private land through a right-of-way. And it's unreasonable for a property owner who has a main house, a garage apartment for their relatives, can't one day give the same relative a section of their private land. For example, you've got 18-year-olds living in the garage apartment over the house. That 18-year-old, he finally graduates college, wants to come back to your 50 acres. You're going to section off something for him. And now you possibly can't. Even though he's been driving that road for however many years, you can no longer section off your own private property. So we have asked that these two lines from the private road side be removed. Now, let me go back because I've heard talk of, well, we need a right-of-way. So there are right-of-ways and there are easements. And an attorney can probably correct me on this or may correct me on this. A right-of-way is considered in the eyes of the law as more of a public road, whereas an easement is a private agreement to cross by traffic. So you're asking a private owner on his private property if he wants 4 dwellings back there, it's a public road, even though it's your private road under the private road ordinance. We would ask council to remove this entirely or to put the right-of-way at curb to curb, because we would see private roads to go back to early 2000s where 20 foot of pavement, beyond that is your property, instead of 20 foot of pavement, and we're gonna control 15 more feet of either side of your property, even though we're never gonna take a look at it, never come out there, and not ever do anything with it, but you can't do anything with it either on your own private land. Thank you.
Thank you. You actually hit the nail on the head as far as I'm concerned, because I've got 6 grandchildren. I've got a 30-acre farm, and I want to put a road down through there, down the property line, put in a right-of-way, and chop off 6 one-acre tracts. And I won't be able to do that with this as the way it is. I can only go 3. So you've got me bought.
If I may. There's a lot to unpack. So previous roads, and the road standards, the private drives, all private drives existing and in use at the time of the adoption of these regulations, as well as those private drives under construction prior to the time of the adoption, shall be exempted from the standards contained in this section. So pre-2006, this isn't considered in that. The county taking anything less than 40 foot on waterside, we've spent a year trying to get 5 more feet either side of that road to make sure it was 50. So we are getting 50 foot full right of way for that road. The small farm part of this, yes, that can be looked at, that can be considered, limiting right of way to a shorter distance. As you'll see, Oconee, Pickens, Anderson, they are all the same, whether it's a small farm or a private road. Greenville and Spartanburg does allow it to go down to 40 for private drives to that end. But I guess from my end of it, and I don't really have an end of it because I'm county roads and not private roads, but if I were to have an end of it, Foxwood Hills. So you consider Foxwood Hills with no right-of-way. You consider those folks trying to maintain those roads in Foxwood Hills with no right-of-way. Curb to curb, right-of-way is so fundamental to what we do. If you tell me that I can only maintain that road between the curb to curb, it will take, generally it takes us, we try to get around with a slope mower every 3 years. By the time we get around on the 3rd year, vegetation's already growing back in the right-of-way. So it's not really that the road is not, you can't get down the road, but you'll be driving down the middle of the road. And if you have 15 houses, if you have 100 houses, then all them other people are trying to get by you too. So that's more what we're talking about when we consider right-of-way along private roads, as it goes. To remove that, it's just a fundamental thing of maintaining a road. And everybody that lives along a private road, they may not have the extent that we deal with, but they're going to deal with something like what we deal with on a daily basis at roads and bridges. And without right-of-way, it gets difficult to do what may be necessary to get a safe and proper road to drive down, especially with vegetation. That's the biggest problem with it. If something happens to the road, then that's a problem, and that could lead to further headaches for somebody, because if you don't have the right to go in there and do anything to fix it, then you don't have the right to fix it. The removal of deleterious material, stumps, trees, whatever, roots, all that other stuff is just really so somebody doesn't push a bunch of trees down in the low place of the road and the road fails after 10 years. That's really all that's for. It's just making sure that people get a proper road. As far as what we control, we don't. I've never controlled anything inside the right-of-way of a private road. We have had to do things, and right to access is important, especially when we've had to do things for emergency management, when we were called out to private roads. And like I said, going back, if the committee would deem it proper, allowing staff, planning commission to get together and kind of work through some of these things, may be the best avenue as far as, limiting the width of a road, a right-of-way, or changing that number to where you can have, going from 3 to 6 or whatever it may be. on that end. But I can tell you and I'll make this point, I know we've got to go. So to have a 40-foot right-of-way and to have a 20-foot wide road with proper shoulders and ditches, if you have ditches on either side, then you are at 40 foot, just to fit the road in there. So you got a 10-foot lane, a 4-foot shoulder, 6 foot, 3 foot to go down in the ditch, 3 foot to come back up, and you're at 20 feet. So 40 foot of right-of-way. As far as some of the examples, the BZA is here to consider limiting right-of-way along roads. I think they had an issue like that here recently, that they limited right-of-way for a road that was, kind of on a ridge going out through there, and it was going to be curb and gutter. But as far as our end of it, the consistency and given that consistency is paramount to the right-of-way.
Mr. Reed,
Yes, sir.
I've got those 6 lots cut off, and I got a 20-foot right-of-way in there, or a 20-foot road. I don't care where you come out there or not. If the asphalt tears up, that's my road. I'll take care of it.
Right.
So, that's my part on, this is a private property, and the man that owns that property.
Right.
If he sees fit to maintain that road, if it was in the case of being my grandchildren, and if the Lord lets me live long enough, I would take care of that road myself.
So the issue with that is, say you do subdivide that between the 6 kids, and the kid on the very front of the road decides to sell. Well, if you don't have right-of-way, that gentleman or that person, whoever buys that road, can do whatever they want to with that property. You have no right to that property at that point. That right-of-way would keep people from not doing it, because I can tell you,
I don't know, pardon me, but I don't know who surveyed that for you, but if I survey it, and it's the first lot, I'm still gonna have that 20-foot right-of-way to get me to the road. The person that owns that first lot is gonna start with their property line on the edge of that 20-foot road and not in the middle of it, or not to where they have anything to do with that road. You see what I'm saying? I mean, that's gonna be mine.
yeah, you're talking about like a flag lot.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I'm gonna have it down at, you could say I've got 6 flag lots, but they're all using the same road. 1, 2, 3, and just do away with the lots in front of it, if that's the way you wanna look at it. They're gonna be flag lots.
Right. So
Using
going
the
all
same
way to the
road.
road, yeah. Yeah, and that would be, I mean, if you took individual lots like to that, then yes, and you can have 3 houses off of whatever you end up putting in there. So, I mean, you can put 6 houses on, if you wanted to go down to 12 and you had a 12-foot driveway and it was that flat and level, you could go down to 12, have 3 houses off of that, do another 12, have 3 houses off of that, and get to 6. You get
Well,
nine pretty
that's
quick
what I'm
with those
saying,
six.
as far as that, I mean, this is private property, and if you cut those lots out, you would cut them out to where they all tie together, and they all tie to the edge of the road, which would be the property line, and the private property owner would own the 20 feet away from that property line, which would mean it would be his road. And he would be in charge of it. I don't care if he sells it to John Jones later
Yeah.
down the road, he's still got access, that road belongs to him.
Yeah, if you have individual access per lot, then no, that's not a problem at all. Yeah, it's not a problem at all. But if you're doing individual access to every lot, then it's easier just to do a 40-foot right-of-way. And that right-of-way can be, for a drive, it can be an easement. It doesn't have to be a platted out right-of-way. For a drive. For a road, it does have to be platted out.
It may be best that you do meet with the planning commission and y'all talk about it.
Yes, sir.
I'll make that motion so we move forward. I see both sides to it. I know we've had, guess we've served on a planning commission together for 6 years, and we've had 4 private roads that we've accepted in here. And what I don't want to get into is when somebody has a private road and then somebody blocks off access, and here we are, that person that's blocked off access comes up here. Now, it should be an easement. I mean, on the real estate world, there better be an easement, and if it's sold as that way it should be, that should solve the issue. So whatever the right-of-way is, if you want to build a 12-foot road or whatever it is, that's fine. But what I know that we've gotten into, and we've accepted most of those private roads because they've been built actually to county specs, and some of them were just gravel roads that we accepted and improved. But access to those is, I think, what the concerning part of it is, because it never fails. The gentleman, I think it's our second year in here, we were serving on there, that was talking about how he can't get access to medical attention, and that was an ambulance getting to and from his because of the road, and it was a private road. And we later in that year ended out improving that road in our rudimentary road program, which was a good thing for all those. I think there were 17 homes on that road. So those things come forward, which I think is why Mr. Reed comes forward, and the planning commission has some great comments from Mr. Johnson there. So I'm, like I said, that motion to have that conversation as we move forward, because I see both sides to it, but I definitely don't want somebody to lose access. And I don't think, it's not our job to come in here on private property. I mean, I got farm roads too. So, but I just think the key to it is, if it sells down the road, if this person loses access to that better be in the deed on our real estate people moving forward. And I think the things that you brought up about surveying solve that problem. So, but again, nobody's perfect on that world. So I make that motion for them to work together with planning to come up with something, bring it back to council.
I'll second it. Any other discussion? If not, all in favor say aye.
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 Ms. Kane? You still there? Do you go bye-bye?
Yes, sir. Mr. Kane, can you hear us?
I'm sorry, I was muted. Aye.
The vote is 3-0.
I need a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second. I
All in
was
favor?
looking at the clock, so 15 minutes from now. Aye.
Aye.
Aye, to adjourn, okay?